where every Saturday morning we bring you another edition of this wonderful collection of neighbors talking about how they do good in the world. I'm Thom Clark. I'm president of the Community Media Workshop and taking over as a substitute this morning for Michael James and Katie Hogan, your normal hosts, who are attending both to family business this holiday weekend. We are hoping that the early morning rain will lend itself over to sunshine as we begin to move into this Memorial Day weekend. And our first guest this morning, we're going to go through art and music and community activity this morning. My first guest is Richard Adams, who has a wonderful exhibit of photography up on the walls of the Heartland Cafe. For about a month or so, Richard and I actually know each other because we're part of a regular Saturday morning breakfast men's group here at the Heartland, where we talk all things theological, social, and whatnot. But Richard, photography is your first love. It is how you express yourself, amongst other things, as we'll discover here in the next few minutes, as an artist. Tell us a little bit about how you got into photography and, well, start on that.
I got into photography when my parents gave me a camera on my 12th birthday, a little Brownie Hawkeye, and I shot pictures all over California and Arizona with that camera as a boy. And then when I went to college, I worked as an assistant to a portraitist, a Southern California portraitist by the name of Henry Tavian, who was something of an innovator with portraiture. He had a method of matting silhouettes inside silhouettes. It was very winsome. And then years later, I started working in the communications business and engaged the services of photographers, and some really good ones. Larry Dale Gordon was one of the people that worked for me at Industrial Research Magazine when I was there in the late 60s. And then later I worked with with Larry McCann, two Larrys. Larry McCann, who was one of the main Chicago shooters for Leo Burnett at the time. He did a lot of Kellogg's work, and we did things together in his studio. And I learned from that, and then through the years began purchasing my own equipment and shot on black and white film for decades before I ventured onto color. And then came the wonders of the digital revolution.
The digital revolution.
Yeah. It really has transformed just about everything about photography, except that you have to have an eye behind the camera that knows what it's looking for, and that hasn't changed. But I will say all the technical aspects of photography became much easier for me, much more doable. It's the same with all of the areas of artisan activity with the computer. People who were amateurs start calling themselves professionals. People who really don't have that much claim to expertise can put up a show like I have here at the Heartland. I say I don't have much claim to expertise. Maybe I'm being too modest, but because I have made my living taking pictures part of the time in my life. But
it's rare for those of us who enjoy photography to actually be able to make a living at it, much less live through this phenomenal transition. I will admit that I resisted the move to digital. How quickly did you embrace it? Don't you miss the darkroom experience? As someone who used to do black and white?
I gave the darkroom experience to professionals. My experience, my preference was with the camera and with looking through the camera and with making those images. And I know that the negative is the score and the performance is the print, and I gave it to excellent performers. I gave them good nags, but I just didn't have the patience to do that work. And when I did it earlier in my life, I found it just took over everything. I was obsessed with it. I couldn't really walk away from it. Had to make it perfect. And that's tough, you know.
So through the wonders of radio, I'd like you to actually describe, if you would, the kind of images that are up on the wall here in this restaurant that we're talking from this morning. What was it that you were trying to do? Tell our listeners what they would see if they were sitting here with us this morning, Richard.
These are dark backgrounds, black, inky black, deep inky black backgrounds, and you have colored light that describe colored lights that describe calligraphic movement, like the movement of a pen across the page. And they're related to each other because there are a number of lights in the environment that are coming toward the camera. This is all lights in traffic from vehicles and street lights. Some of the lights are solid streaks. Some of them are dotted lines because those light sources were from gas pulsed street lights rather than incandescent lights. So you get, and those are sometimes brown or green in tone, and you get the stop lights, you get the turn lights, the yellow, you get the white lights that are on storefronts, bright light sources, and this is all. It's not so much blurred as it is in motion. It's not really blurred because I have the camera stopped down enough that the lights are pinpoint sources, most of them, and so the motion is a line rather than a blur. So and it's very colorful. It sets up because the camera is moving. I dance the camera in front of the lights. As the camera moves toward the light and the light moves toward the camera, I dance the camera. So it's motion, motion, motion. It's like an analog between personal relationships and a crowd. So that's what it is. It sets up rhythms. If you have a sufficiently long exposure, you can have lines that go in one direction and then lines that go in another direction. It's kind of a mixed thing that way. And I invite people to come and see my gifts of language are not sufficient to.
Actually, I think you've done a great job describing what urban nighttime lighting that does move. Perhaps a bit more artistic than the kind of more documentary style of exhibits.
They're totally abstract.
Yeah. So how do you respond to people when you talk about your photography as art and they look at an abstract exhibit like this and they go, "Oh, artsy fartsy, it's not doing anything for me"?
Well, I invite them to try it. People say, "Well, my kid could do that." They haven't said that to me, but I've heard people say that about art that they see in the museum. "Oh, my kid could do that." I just invite them to try it. It's just not as simple and as straightforward as it looks.
There is a wonderful abstract movement to the whole thing, and having seen some of your more documentary work for the company that you've worked for, where you're taking pictures of large equipment or large bodies of water around river confluences or lakefronts or ocean fronts, this very, very different kind of photographic style you've adapted here. Did the digital world of photography now influence the way you did this?
This particular project?
Yes.
Yeah, oh, absolutely, because you can see what you've got in the camera immediately. And so you know if your exposure is right. I mean, this kind of photography with film would take some experimentation before you could start. My daughter Katie and I were going on the lower level of Wacker Drive. I had my camera set for some long exposures that I'd been taking elsewhere in another project, and she had this camera and she was trying to take pictures of cars in traffic, and she got these blurred lines, rather than any kind of discrete image of an automobile, and this intrigued me, and so she and I together started this out. Then I said, "Oh, give me the camera," and we started dancing the camera with these long exposures, and right away had a pretty good result. Just because of the way the camera had been set for something else, it just happened to work. So that was how it started.
Richard, you're a bit of a renaissance man. In retirement, you've hardly been retiring besides being able to develop your photography, you've also gotten or rediscovered the musical side of your life. Tell us a little bit about the Music Institute, or just get right into your use of group recorder performances that you've begun to do over the last year or two.
Well, I started out as a trumpeter and then as a French horn player, and in college I played French horn in a symphony at my college, the University of Redlands in Southern California. And then when I went to Salzburg as a junior for the semester experience, I picked up a recorder. This is the end-blown flute that you get in the 5th grade or 3rd grade or whatever to play. And I discovered the literature for the recorder. The recorder is an instrument that people don't appreciate the depth of the recorder in musical culture in Europe in the Renaissance and Baroque eras. In the Renaissance, people played choirs of recorders, soprano, alto, tenor, bass, great bass, and in a family like the Trapp family, as you see in The Sound of Music, play the recorders together. Then in the Baroque era, people began to specialize and become soloists rather than playing in groups of choric groups. And so I went through this, I kind of reiterated this whole process myself as a youngster, playing first music from the late Renaissance, Orlandus Lassus and Achagem and other Renaissance composers, and then discovered, after I moved to the Midwest from Southern California, the vast volume of Baroque literature for the recorder, and I started playing it. At my church, we had a group of people that gathered together to make Baroque music. One of us plays the viola da gamba, which is it's like a cello, only it has 6 strings instead of 4, and it's kind of more related to the lute than anything else. But it's played with a bow, and that's the bass instrument, and then the harpsichord is the keyboard instrument, and then a solo instrument could be oboe, flute, recorder, any of a number of instruments. And so we started playing with a synthesizer for the harpsichord up there at St. Augustine's Episcopal Church in Wilmette, where I attend. And then a fan of ours decided that we deserved to have a harpsichord, and so they rented a harpsichord, and then this person died, and her husband bought the harpsichord and gave it to the parish as a memorial to his wife. So we have this nice resource to play with at our church, and so we do that. And then I've taken lessons from Patrick O'Malley, who is one of 2, I think, premier recorder players in Chicago. And Patrick then started teaching at the Music Institute of Chicago here in Evanston, at their Evanston campus, and put together a group of his students, 3 of us, who were fairly matched in skill and have been at it for a while and can read pretty readily material. And so we started playing together as a trio. We have the full range of instruments. It's Albert Thompson, Brian Sundermeyer, and myself. And what one of us doesn't have in the way of an instrument, the other one does. And Albert has a collection that's just huge. And I myself have a sopranino recorder, 2 soprano recorders, about 5 alto recorders, a couple tenor recorders, and a couple bass recorders.
I can understand Baroque music in a church setting, but how does Baroque music speak to you out in this modern world? Why are you continuing to develop and even take lessons on what many of us, I think, experience as that first instrument a grammar school kid might get in music school, and then you don't see it again?
Of course, it's the amateur impulse, Tom. You know, I just love it. I just love it. And if I had my trio here, we'd play for you some Baroque trios, and you'd see why. I mean, it's just, the music is utterly charming, it's highly energetic, it's ebullient, it's joyous, and It expresses a range of emotions. It can be very pretty and sad. It can be very bouncy and joyous, as I say, and just making it happen. It's just the joy of making something beautiful happen. It's like singing in a choir, you know. Why would you sing Palestrina? Well, it's just devastatingly beautiful.
We're talking with Richard Adams, who has a photo exhibit currently here at the Heartland Cafe, and also has been digging a bit into the art of the recorder as he uses it both in, shall I say, work and play. Is your trio have any performances coming up soon?
We're going to play a concert on September 11th, oddly enough, at St. Andrew's Church down on the campus at St. Leonard's House, which is another interest of mine. I work with the residents at St. Leonard's House, who are people emerging from prison sentences, on developing personal narratives, placing themselves on the line of the story of their lives in a narrative way, writing about it. And because of my association there, I asked the people if they wouldn't like to have us come and make a presentation to the residents. We did this, and we did this last winter actually, and none of us ever played for a more responsive, respectful, attentive audience than we had with those guys, the residents at St. Leonard's House. So yeah, we've got that going, and yes, the work at St. Leonard's House is wonderful. They have a really high success rate of returning people to a normal existence after having.
Well, using your music that way at a place like St. Leonard's, I think fleshes out the third aspect as we close out this interview of Richard Adams, which is that you're pursuing a new vocation at this point in your life. Can you talk briefly about why becoming a deacon in your church?
Well, I have the impulse to serve my church, the Episcopal Church as it happens, and deacon, the diaconate, is a servant ministry. Why? Well, I love God. It's in my being. It's in my soul to do this. And the congregation of which I am a part nominated me for this work and this honor, and I'm pursuing it with the approval and support of the Diocese of Chicago. And it's a 3-year process of education and discernment. I won't know that I'm going to be ordained until I get closer to it, but for now I'm happy to work toward it. It's an opportunity to study Scripture, which I love, have always loved since I was a boy. It's an opportunity to consider modalities of ministry in this world that we have. I mean, there are so many things that need to be done. Choosing one thing is really a challenge, and sticking with it and going toward it. It's all in the service of the God who sees me, you know?
Well, Richard Adams, it's quite a pleasure to be able to talk in a little bit more in depth about your grabbing onto life, even as you pursue a new vocation, your enjoyment of music, and your sharing through this photo exhibit how you've truly moved from the film age to the digital age with photography. Thanks a lot for joining us this morning on Life
Thank
in
you very
Heartland.
much.
So a round of applause for Richard Adams. Our next guest is someone who actually performed here last night at the Heartland Cafe, a very unusual musician. Alice Stewart, please come on up here on stage and join us here. We're very grateful for Alice making it up this morning after having a long evening here, entertaining folks. I am talking with a revered blues artist, and Alice and I have just met this morning, but you're on a tour out of the Northwest, and tell us a little bit about how you picked up on the blues 40 years ago and how it continues to inform your life and what you share with the rest of us?
Well, I was playing, I learned to play guitar, and I was in Seattle, Washington, and I heard some 78s. I was playing folk music, basically, and I had heard some 78s of some of the blues from the 20s and 30s, like Mamie Smith and Clara Smith and Bessie Smith, and then I was very interested in learning to really play guitar well, so I was... I heard Blind Willie McTell, and I just said, "That's it. That's what I want to be able to play like." So that's how I got into it.
You know, we value our birthplace of blues here in Chicago quite a bit, but of course the blues has been born all over the place. Did you grow up with it in the Northwest?
I did not. I grew up playing classical piano, and then I played drums all the way through school, and I always wanted a guitar because I grew up in the time of Buddy Holly and Elvis Presley and early Johnny Cash. And I lived in a very rural town where we didn't actually get TV over there until pretty late because mountains all around us, and we were a small community. We were actually the apple capital of the world, Chelan, Washington.
So I'm seeing kind of a hunger for troubadour. Instead of picking up on bluegrass or country or something like that, I'm playing into the stereotype here of growing up in a rural setting. How did blues enter your life in that kind of with that kind of an upbringing and background?
Well,
was it these other artists that you started hearing that you really just wanted to be part of?
It all came out of that. It's roots music, right? It's roots music, and where did roots music come from? Right?
From the American experience.
Right.
Right?
Exactly. And I wasn't really, where I'm from, it wasn't really cowboy music or something. It was more with the kids. It was more like early rock and roll, Chuck Berry and and I was like, I want a guitar so bad. But nobody had a guitar in town. It wasn't, and we had no radio either. So it was interesting that I didn't really get around it till I got to an urban area, till I got to Seattle, and I started playing folk music. And I think pretty early on, probably it hit me, that where my real passion lay was there. And then I got into electric guitar after that. So I also have a band and play with electric instruments.
So when you move across the country, particularly coming to a place like Chicago, and I want to talk a little bit about why else you came here on this particular trip in a moment, is your engagement with learning folk music and then blues self-taught on the guitar?
Yes.
What was it like when you first were in a place like Chicago and you began to hear our native music, if you will?
Well, I've only been here one other time. And in fact, the other time I was here, I played here. I was going to do a tour with Tom Dundee, who was...
Wow.
Yeah, and he was a good friend of mine. And we had a tour planned, and then he ran into the telephone pole and died, which was very awful. But I came anyway and sang at his memorial and got to know a few people and, made the trek around all the blues clubs and whatnot. I think of myself, to tell you the truth, I'm called a blues singer by everybody except the blues people. Mm-hmm. It's kind of funny.
What do they call you?
Because I do everything. I don't know. I probably country, or I kind of mix them up. I call myself genreless, but still and yet everything I sing kind of comes from that place, So
you came on this tour because you were asked to give a lecture?
I was asked to give a lecture in a small concert for this class that's studying archiving, because Northwestern University bought the archives of the Berkeley Folk Festival from 1959 through the end of it, which was 1970. And I was in 3 of those festivals. In fact, that was my introduction to being a professional at 22 years old. I was thrown into this before 10,000 people situation. And so anyway, they invited me here as a participant in that situation. And I got to go through some of the archives, and it's absolutely amazing. I mean, I saw stuff in there that I didn't even know existed. You know, there's pictures and letters that I wrote to the director and letters that he wrote back to me. He kept an impeccable system of articles and everything. So, and I have full access to all this now. So now I can start writing my book.
There you go. What will that book? What kind of a focus do you think you'll take on with writing a book?
Basically a bio.
The archivist students that you were meeting with, what was their interest in the blues? I mean, they had this particular Berkeley Folk Festival that they were collecting stuff on.
I don't think they were interested in the blues particularly. I think they were interested in the festival itself. You know, it was a folk festival, but see, folk used to encompass more than, you know what I mean? You can have ethnic folk, whatever, music from all over the world is folk music, right?
I didn't keep up with the guitar that I also self-taught myself with the way you have through high school and college, but it was those early Newport Folk Festival LPs and, you know, Judy Collins and whatnot that I remember from those formative years that really influenced a lot of the way I looked at music. Later, Paul Simon and whatnot. There was always a lot more interest. I mean, I liked rock and everything else like you were talking about as well, but the folk and folk rock genre were always really important to me. And then as I discovered my Chicago roots, I guess, blues and other things like that started coming through.
Yeah.
We're going to give our listeners a chance to hear Alice Stewart in just a minute as she performed last night, but I'm curious, these students were more interested in the festival, not so much the blues. Well,
archiving, they're learning art of archiving, I think. It was the focus of the class. So it wasn't any particular style of music that they were interested in personally.
So what did you decide to play for them?
Oh, I just played my repertoire. You know, I play some of my own songs that I write. I play some Bob Dylan songs. I just play whatever I myself fancy. You know what I mean? It doesn't matter. And I write a lot, so I do that too.
Well, let's have you pick up your strings and box here.
Okay. Well, I'd just like to say one other thing.
Sure.
I have come to the conclusion that blues music actually is I feel like it's really truly American music. And everywhere I've traveled in the world and played my music, people, if you grow up with it here, or you grow into it like day by day by day, and I think most blues musicians, like I was honored to know Mississippi John Hurt and a number of other people. I got to play with him, and it's folk music. It's American music, right?
Absolutely, and in fact, we'll be celebrating it here in Chicago in 2 weeks at the
I know,
Chicago
I'm just going to
Blues
miss it. I'm
Fest.
so
You're just
sad.
Gonna miss it. You ought to be on the stage for it.
I know.
So while Alice picks up her guitar here to entertain us this morning at Live from the Heartland at the corner of Lunt and Glenwood, I want to invite you all to listen in. It looks like she has at least one piece ready to go here. And again, she kept the whole group entertained here through the evening. And Alice, take it away. So we have one more piece of equipment to get set up here while you get your vocals and your strings ready to go. We are very glad the city is continuing its festivals even as it's cut back this year. And the Blues Fest is always one of our more popular ones that we have going. And again, that's going to be on the weekend of June 8th, 9th, and 10th. You can go on the web to get more details about it. We almost have Alice hooked up here, and here she is ready to go.
I just couldn't find a plug in there. This is a song I wrote about a woman from Memphis, Mississippi Memphis Minnie. I don't know why I said Mississippi, because it's 9 o'clock in the morning and I was up till 3. That's probably why I said that. But anyway, this is a song I wrote about her. She wrote a lot of fabulous songs. I'm standing here on the stage tonight, tell you about a woman who got it right. She was a guitar woman, played the blues, played anything that she wanted to. Stand back, boys, don't start no fight, 'cause I'm channeling Memphis Minnie tonight. Well, I never really copied anybody's style. Learned my lessons, yeah, I learned them well. I learned a lot from Furry Lewis, Fred McDowell, Lightning Hopkins, Blind Willie McTell, Lightning Hopkins, Blind Blake, Rabbit Brown. Those boys could really lay it down. They were good, they were able, but many played them under the table. Well, she talked about the bumblebee and its stinger in one of them dirty blues, a real humdinger. That black rat, she was gonna find his trail, bury his shoes in his shirt tail. She chose to ramble, not settle down, and she wanted her boyfriend to drive her round. Big Bill Bruce, he thought he was able, but Minnie, hey, played him under the table. Christmas Day, when she was only 8, she got a salvation box, learned to play on the streets of Memphis in her girlish days. Now rumor had it she could be mean, but she sure could make a guitar scream. Stand back, boys, don't start no fight. Heartland, Memphis Minnie tonight. Stand back, boys, don't start no fight, 'cause I'm channeling Memphis Minnie tonight. I'm lucky I'm even here this morning, by the way. I'll tell you right now that 3 o'clock in the morning I said, I can't sing at 9 o'clock in the morning. Thank you so much. Sorry about that.
That's Alice Stewart, who was performing here last night at the Heartland Cafe on a tour. Alice, do you want to come back here for a second? I want to give you a chance to plug your latest CD.
Oh, thank you so much.
You can find out more information and actually get your hands on 4 or 5 different CDs that Alice has done.
Actually 9. They're not
She's
all
up to 9 at alicestewart.com is how you can follow up with this wonderful artist. Alice, tell us a little bit about your most recent CD. And
I was going to mention the spelling of Stewart.
Please do that.
Because if you don't spell it Stuart, you're not going to find it.
That's a good point. So your latest disc.
My
called
latest,
Freedom.
actually. No, well, all right. My latest.
Tell us about Freedom, and then tell us about your latest disc.
Thank you. Okay, Freedom was made in Memphis with my band, and it's got almost all of them are original tunes, and one's a Bob Dylan tune and one's a Johnny Cash tune. That's Freedom. It's a yellow one. I brought a couple with me if anybody's interested. And my latest project is a DVD 2 CD package of a live concert. Pretty much acoustic with my band without a drummer. So,
Alice Stewart, thank you so much for getting up so early in the morning after you performed last night. For people who'd like to hear more about this music, please go to Alice Stewart. That is spelled Stuart, AliceStewart.com. Thanks for sharing your blues with us. Another round of applause for Alice Stewart.
Thank you so much. Well, thank you, Tom. All right.
I'm now going to invite Dan McNeil up on stage to join me to talk a little bit about things going on here in the neighborhood of Rogers Park. You are listening to Live from the Heartland, a regular Saturday morning hour of information, news, and entertainment from wonderful Rogers Park at the corner of Glenwood and Lunt. Dan McNeil, you are with Family Matters, and tell us a little bit about this project that you've taken on to try to alleviate one of the major challenges we're facing here in the neighborhood these days.
Well, first let me start a little context. Family Matters is a nonprofit organization which has been in the neighborhood and been working with youth and different community institutions since the late 1980s. I am the director of the Young Men's Program at Family Matters and have been working with young men from the ages of 12 up to about 23. We've been working basically with a concept that each one of us has a God-given gift, innate if you want, talent or talents. And if you can help an individual discover his God-given gift or innate gift or talent, it gives them a sense of authenticity, a sense of self-valuing, which is very important for youth who are trying to find their way and find out who they are and where they fit in the world. So using that concept, we have involved the youth in a myriad of artistic expressions. They've done plays. We have a drum troupe called Roots of Rhythm. We have paintings which have been exhibited at the Mave Theater. We've done acting, writing. So on that note, given that one of the challenges that is facing our community, I guess the world at large, is how to reduce conflict. The youth are often seen as one of the, correctly or incorrectly or statistically, one of the main ingredients in the concerns of violence in the neighborhood. So we were trying to put together a peace event where youth contest, where youth design a peace design, which we will then make into T-shirts. We have made several T-shirts. One of the T-shirts that we have out now is called Eclipse the Violence, which is basically a sign of circles of a violence and peace, and at the top, peace has eclipsed the violence. So we wanted to take that out into the larger community, involve more youth in that, and we thought if the youth could come up with a design, a peace design, we would then put that on T-shirts, and then have that design also put on space murals around the neighborhood, basically to raise the consciousness of the peace concept and to involve the youth in that. Now, the key to that is how do you get youth involved? Because they're on another page, because they're in another place of development. So we thought that the prize would be very important. So what we're trying to do is find people who would donate the prize so that when they won the contest, well, first to get them involved in the contest, and then to publicize a big event of the winnings. So we were looking at possibly having some training tickets or whatever for the Bulls or the Bears. I personally would love to have, and this may be a little grandiose, I would love to have the design, the winner of the design, to have receive a vehicle. So I'm looking at if any of you car dealers are out there that have a vehicle, we want to turn that vehicle, and because we are a nonprofit, it would be tax exempt, tax write-off, turn that vehicle into a peace vehicle, mobile, like not like the Batmobile, but a peace mobile that would then be around the neighborhood. So you would have shirts, murals, and a mobile that would all be raising the consciousness done by youth.
Taking donate your car to a whole nother level.
There you
as
go.
we end up with a
There
peace
you go.
mobile going around Rogers Park.
Let
me back
yes.
up a step here, because you got right into how you're trying to fix this, but I suppose it goes without saying that a lot of people believe, or so it's said, that we have a bigger problem with street organizations today and young men and women getting into trouble than ever before. I would attribute that to the state of our economy, the lack of jobs, et cetera. But it seems like you're trying to get right at this issue of keeping young people busy, keeping them actively engaged in something other than what a street organization might attract them to. Do we have a bigger problem in Rogers Park today than we used to in the supposed good old days? And if so, how are your kind of efforts through Family Matters and the Young Men's Program alleviating that?
Well, first, the concept of non-peace or violence is a multi-pronged situation. There's social, there's racial, there's historical, there's psychological, there's definitely economic, lack of resources. So this problem has to be addressed on several levels. Has things gotten better or worse? I guess it's a matter of perspective. I think in some real sense, the youth are becoming more involved and are becoming more visible in the community, and that may be the beginning of the resolution of the problem. So I think that if we're looking at ourselves as a community, we have to look at our youth as part of the community, and how do we bring them into the community in a way where they feel validated and a part of the community. So that's one of the approaches.
So with this T-shirt contest, what kind of engagement are you getting? How are you measuring your impact or your success at this point?
Well, at this point, most of the work we've been done has been done with the youth that work directly with Family Matters. I am now partnering with several other community organizations to look at peace strategies. I'm working with Good News Partners. I'm working with Ceasefire, O&E. So this is a collaborative effort to engage the youth in a myriad of ways. There are people who are doing theater, hip hop, music, drumming. Drumming is a great medium for producing a communal event. When you sit down and you participate in the rhythm, you feel like you are part of a community, rhythmically speaking, and I think that transfers out into other aspects of the youth's lives.
So you also been playing with rhythms and whatnot. You have some poetry you'd like to share with us this morning.
I do have my other passion, or what I consider one of my focuses, is writing, as well as drumming and movement. And these things bring me to life and keep me animated. So I wanted to share a poem with the concept of peace called "The Great Waterfall of Peace."
Dan McNeil, folks.
Through the rocky path of our lives poured the great waterfall of peace, a tempestuous bursting forth like an urgent need finally fulfilled. Like dew over crusted earth, it covered the cracked footprints of our stumbling steps. Yet it came not as a shout in the streets, but as a whisper heard around the table, a grin as we spoke each other's name and shared our bread. Night now falls lightly unafraid, like love secure. Children now laugh forever. Strangers are friends just now met. And the leaders of the world dance barefoot around the maypole. Peace, peace, peace. Peace has eased into the marrow of our march through time. The lion has laid down with the lamb. There's a twinkle in every eye, fresh flower in every room, food for every plate. Peace, peace, peace. Two and more have gathered in thy name, and the world is a wondrous parade an offering held in trusted hands of red, yellow, black, and white. Peace, peace, peace. The great waterfall of peace has come, and we thirst no more.
Thank you, Dan McNeil. I appreciate that. So you talked about your collaborations with the Young Men's Program through Family Matters with several other organizations. I think the documentary, The Interrupters, has brought a particular focus on the approach
Yes.
of ceasefire, which is always scrambling for resources. It's very intensive interventions that they're doing.
Yes.
How are they doing here in Rogers Park with helping organizations like you and others that are really on the front line of dealing with this problem? Organization in the Northeast you mentioned earlier, Good News Church. How well is Ceasefire integrating their particular intensive programs with what the rest of you are doing here day in and day out?
Well, as I said, I think what we've done, we've started to come together as different organizations. I don't have the exact statistics, but I do understand that since Ceasefire has been in operation in Rogers Park and Uptown, there has been a significant drop in violence. And if anyone has yet to see the movie The Interrupters, it is an excellent movie to get an insight on the magnitude of the problem and what Ceasefire is doing to minimize that problem. It's a very courageous thing, physically and I guess in terms of just morally, to put yourself out there and intervene yourself in a potentially violent conflict. So I don't have the statistics, but I have heard that there has been a significant reduction of violence due to that presence.
How many young men do you have involved with your program?
Right now I have about 15 young men who are actively involved. We have young men who are on our board of directors. We have alumni who come back and give support. It's really interesting to watch the development of youth. It's like a farmer with crop. You watch them go through their season and their growing season, and you watch them bloom into their harvest. And it's particularly wonderful to have young men come back. We have a young man who is working, who has started the 808. The three young men who started a youth through dance empowerment, or youth empowerment through dance. So when you see youth who at the point when you first engage, you go, oh boy, this is going to be a hard one. And you see that they come to fruition and are starting to have a real commitment of giving back to the community. That makes it all worthwhile.
As the school year comes to an end and that the hot and hazy days of summer come about, do you expect your program to grow beyond that core of 15?
Well, yeah, when I say 15, that's because we are housed we're in the north of Howard area on Marshfield. And so we are housed in what we call the roots, which is the basement. So 15 is about the max you can do with a lot of high energy young men at the time. But in terms of the impact that we involved with, I teach drumming at Willie White. I've worked with the students at Gale. Family Matters has other youth. There's a young women's program. So the amount of youth that we actually impact is probably in the hundreds within the organization and within Gale and the larger community. So it's just 15 who are in my program, but we have tutoring. We have a young women's program. We work with other community organizations, we work with Gales. So there's quite a number of youth that we're affecting.
So do you think we'll see your T-shirt design up on Threadless? There's something for the rest of the world to vote on?
I certainly expect to. We have had tremendous support from Sharp Print, who has George over there, who actually met through Michael James, has been a very ardent supporter of our artwork and projects, and I would expect to continue to do so. So yes.
You mentioned the performance side of the artwork that you're trying to introduce young men to. Do you have any upcoming performances you'd like people to know about, or other occasions where the community is coming together around the performance-related aspects of what you're doing?
Well, the drum team called Roots of Rhythm Last year performed at the Artists of the Wall Festival. We'll be performing this year at the Artists of the Wall Festival. Have performed in churches, schools, senior citizen homes. And it's really nice because drum has a lot of benefits. The young men have to focus to drum. They have to understand their part, their contribution. They have to take lead. They have to be open to give space to the other drummers and stuff. So it's a very simple, hands-on things that the young men can do. And so that's a very positive way for expression.
Dan McNeil, if people want to find out more about your young men's program at Family Matters, or indeed perhaps help you out, how can they get in touch with you?
The address of Family Matters is 7531 North Marshfield. You're always welcome to come by. The phone number is 773-465-6011. You can extension 122 or 110, and there we have a ton of information regarding what we're doing, what we're trying to do.
So if there was one piece of advice you could give to a parent who's nervous about what her son's going to be up to this summer, what would you tell her?
To listen twice as much as you talk, and to affirm any authentic, positive change or deed. I think young people need a lot of affirmations. They definitely need guidance and sometimes discipline. But I think more and more, if you listen, ask questions, and model what you want them to be, that's a good place to start.
Dan McNeil, thanks so much for joining us this morning in Life in the Heartland. Very important work that Family Matters has been around here forever, working behind the scenes, probably on one of our more critical challenges, which is keeping youth engaged,
Yes.
and not disengaged and getting into trouble. So I wish you the best of luck and congratulations.
Thank you. All right. Take care. Thank you.
In the few minutes we have left here, I'm going to use the privilege of being a guest host to talk about a couple of other things. First of all, the organization that I'm involved with, the Community Media Workshop at Columbia College, has its annual Making Media Connections coming up at Columbia College on Thursday, June 14th. The Community Media Workshop helps a variety of nonprofit organizations, information technologists, and indeed those journalists who still have jobs, along with freelancers and bloggers and whatnot, to adjust to this shifty media landscape by learning the new tools of communications, as well as, quite frankly, some of the ancient art of storytelling. The technology and platforms may have changed, but the core need to develop a narrative that communicates to strategic audiences is more important than ever in this internet age, where we don't have the same kind of gatekeepers deciding for us what is news or is not. On Thursday, June 14th, we'll be running about a half dozen of our most popular half-day training workshops, from firing up your communications plan to kindling the power of social media. We'll also be doing a quick course on how to improve your blogging talents, and we even will touch on how to have successful special events. If there's one common question we get at the Community Media Workshop is, how can we get the media to show up at our benefit? And most of the time people think getting a story in the Tribune is going to help turn out people to their silent auction. Well, that's not the best way to market special events. How many silent auctions do you want to read about in the newspaper or online next week? But certainly special events are an important opportunity for many nonprofits when there's a lot of organizational energy to bring forward their best and indeed get the attention of not only journalists but other parts of the public they may be trying to influence. Midday on June 14th, we are going to be looking at one of the more important social media connectors, LinkedIn. Many people see LinkedIn as simply a professional bulletin board for job searchers, but in fact it's growing into a far more powerful platform. We have the main marketing person for nonprofits from LinkedIn, Brian Breckenridge, who we had the opportunity to meet last year, a very entertaining, funny guy who's going to be coming to give our lunchtime keynote on how to use LinkedIn and other social media platforms not only to find maybe your next job, but to promote your organization's work. And then through the afternoon, probably upwards of a dozen different panels featuring leading journalists, editorial writers, bloggers. We'll be teaching you how to write the subject line that catches the most attention and doesn't end up in a spam filter. How to do search engine optimization. Yes, SEO and those kind of pieces of internet jargon are becoming more and more a part of our work of communicating our stories to the rest of the world. That's Making Media Connections on Thursday, June 14th at Columbia College. For more information, go to communitymediaworkshop.org. That's Making Media Connections on June 14th. More information at 312-369-6400, or you can go to our website at communitymediaworkshop.org. Many of you know that the Community Media Workshop, in conjunction with the Chicago Council on Global Affairs, was playing a very intriguing behind-the-scenes role at last week's NATO Summit, while a variety of organizations took to the streets to press their demands, from nurses trying to get the Robin Hood tax passed to mental health workers and patients trying to keep clinics open by marching on the mayor's home on Saturday, to the big march on Sunday, which was essentially an anti-war, anti-NATO march, through to the phenomenal rally on Tuesday when the teachers came out as they begin to negotiate for a new contract. We at the Community Media Workshop launched chicagostories.org. And what we were trying to do with that was to entertain journalists who were coming here from out of the country to cover NATO, to discover the real Chicago, to connect with both our rich immigrant communities and ethnic media covering those groups, as well as Obama's Chicago, and what people are doing in organizing these days to try to combat the scourge of foreclosure and the rest of the recession crisis that is still being visited in many of our communities. While we're still evaluating the impact of that particular project, chicagostories.org received a lot of attention, particularly out of town. We had something like 43,000 page views over 2 months, if people are taking a look at that as a point of measurement. Chicagostories.org is a repository of information about Chicago that we will be keeping up on the web. Useful for visitors, for Chicagoans who want to discover parts of their backyard that they may not have known on their own. We will continue to push that information out to the International Press Corps, who we think, because of last week's NATO summit, the good and the bad, will in fact be paying a lot more attention to our global city and the exploits and contributions that we're trying to give to the world. You've been listening to Live from the Heartland, from the corner of Lunt and Greenwood, where every week Katie Hogan and Michael James try to bring you the latest news from Rogers Park, the best entertainment our local grassroots entertainers can bring to you, as well as to describe the political activity going on in this neighborhood and out around through the city. Both Katie and Michael are on family business on this holiday weekend, and so they asked me, Thom Clark, of the Community Media Workshop, to come in and do a little substitute action. I appreciate your listening to what we try to do here by talking with the current photography artist on display here at the Heartland, Richard Adams, as well as a phenomenal blues guitar artist, Alice Stewart, who entertained us with a little bit. And finally, the wonderful work of Dan McNeil with Family Matters Young Men's Program. We invite you to visit the Heartland whenever you're in the Rogers Park neighborhood. You can see earlier editions of Live from the Heartland on youtube.com/Heartland Media. As Michael would always want you to know, be the change you wish to see in the world. Actually, that's my daughter, quoting Mahatma Gandhi. Michael would tell you to do good in the world. The world needs all the good that you do. Thanks a lot. Thank you all for listening.